There are three areas in life where control is not just wise, it is essential for transformation. The mind, the tongue, and money. They are subtle masters, quiet influences. Left unchecked, they will shape your destiny in ways you never intended. But when governed with intentionality, they unlock a life of clarity, peace, and purpose. Let us begin with the mind. Your mind is not just where your thoughts reside, it is where your battles are fought. Long before a word escapes your lips or a hand reaches for your wallet, something has occurred in your mind. An agreement has been made, a permission granted, a desire kindled. To guard your mind, therefore, is to guard the source of everything else. Thoughts are not harmless, they are architects. A single thought, if allowed to dwell, can become a belief. A belief can birth a habit, and a habit can become the script of your life. Controlling your mind doesn't mean emptying it. It means filling it with what is good, noble, and eternal. It means questioning every lie that sneaks in disguised as a reasonable truth. It means refusing to be governed by every emotion or memory that seeks to rewrite your story in the shadows of shame. The mind is not just a container, it is a compass, and it will point you toward or away from your purpose, depending on who you allow to influence it. Now, the tongue, we underestimate its power because it is so small, but a flame, though small, can set a forest ablaze. Words are rarely forgotten. They become the soundtrack to someone's life, for good or for ill. Some are walking in strength because of a sentence once spoken in love. Others are still bleeding from words unleashed in rage. To control your tongue is to be a guardian of life. It is to understand that every word is either a seed or a sword. Restraint in speech is not weakness, it is wisdom clothed in dignity. In moments of anger, silence can be more righteous than any argument. In times of conflict, the tongue must be held captive until the heart is clean. For when the heart is cluttered, the tongue becomes reckless. And when the tongue is reckless, relationships and reputations unravel. And finally, money. It is the great revealer, not of status, but of priority, not of success, but of allegiance. Money shows you who or what you truly trust. Do you spend to soothe your insecurity? Do you hoard to guard against imagined fears? Do you give only when it's comfortable or when it's sacrificial? The way we handle money says more about our faith than our prayers do. Controlling money is not about denying yourself joy, it is about freeing yourself from its illusion of power. It is about understanding that money is a tool, not a master. It is not evil, but it is slippery. It offers a false sense of security, a counterfeit of contentment. Those who live for it are never satisfied, but those who master it can live richly even with little, because their peace does not come from the balance in their account, but the balance in their soul. So why does all this matter? Because you were not made to be mastered by anything but love. And love, true, holy, redeeming love, requires discipline. A controlled mind chooses truth over turmoil. A controlled tongue chooses blessing over boasting. A controlled wallet chooses eternity over excess. The world will tell you to indulge your mind, speak your truth, and chase your desires with money. But that path, though wide, leads only to a hollow crown. The narrow path, the one walked with restraint and reverence, is harder, yes, but it leads to something deeper than success. It leads to joy. It leads to peace. It leads to a life that is truly life. Choose mastery. Choose meaning. Choose control, not as a burden, but as the gateway to freedom. There is a quiet war that rages beneath the surface of every human life, one unseen by the eye but felt deeply in the soul. It does not begin with a conflict of nations or a disagreement between people. It begins in the stillness of thought. It begins in the mind. The mind is not a passive observer, it is a battlefield, one in which heaven and hell contend for dominion. Every day, every hour, every moment, your thoughts are the soil where light or darkness sows its seeds. Your mind is not neutral territory. It is the staging ground where your beliefs are shaped, your desires are tested, and your future is silently formed. Heaven does not scream, nor does hell shout. Instead, both whisper subtly, constantly offering you visions of the world, of yourself, and of what is true. The voice you choose to trust becomes the one that molds you. Heaven speaks in quiet truth that you are loved not because of what you produce, but because of who you are, that there is purpose even in pain, that your failures are not your identity. Hell counters with a different script. It feeds you fear, shame, pride, comparison, envy, and despair. It whispers that you're not enough, that no one sees you, that your worth is measured by applause or achievement. And often hell uses your own voice to do it. The most dangerous lies are the ones we believe because they sound like us. The thoughts you allow to stay are the thoughts that grow roots. What begins as a passing doubt becomes a silent belief. And belief, left unchecked, becomes behavior. This is why you must be vigilant with your inner world. You must treat every thought as either an invited guest or an intruder. Not every idea deserves to live in your mind. Some must be shown the door, others welcomed with reverence. Heaven seeks not just to give you good thoughts, but to reshape the very architecture of how you think. It is not content with shallow optimism or blind positivity. Rather, it builds a mind that is anchored in truth, no matter how stormy the world becomes. It teaches you to see people not as enemies, but as image bearers. It reminds you that forgiveness frees you more than bitterness binds them. It trains you to resist the poison of comparison by celebrating others without diminishing yourself. This is not a passive process. The war for your mind is fought with intention. It is fought in the books you read, the conversations you entertain, the content you consume, the silence you avoid, the prayers you neglect, the meditations you embrace. Every input is a contender. Every habit is a decision. Hell wins ground not with explosions, but with erosion. It does not always destroy you with a catastrophe, but with compromise. A little cynicism here, a little self-pity there. A slowly growing numbness to what is holy, a casual justification of what you once resisted. This is how ground is lost inch by inch, thought by thought, and soon the battlefield of your mind becomes enemy territory, and you do not even remember when it began. But you are not without defense. You are not without choice. The mind, though a battlefield, is not doomed to defeat. You can take your thoughts captive. You can renew your thinking. You can build a fortress of truth in the very place where darkness once had a foothold. But this requires more than inspiration. It requires discipline. It requires honesty. It requires the willingness to confront your thoughts, to test them, to ask, where did this come from? What fruit does this produce? Does this thought lift or does it chain? The battle of the mind is where all other battles begin. If you lose here, you will lose elsewhere. But if you win here, if you choose truth, if you guard your gates, if you discern the difference between the voice of heaven and the echo of hell, then your words will carry peace, your choices will reflect purpose, and your life will become a testimony not of chaos, but of clarity. The tongue, though small in size, holds immeasurable power. It is not merely a muscle within the mouth, it is the overflow valve of the soul. What is hidden in the heart does not remain silent forever. Sooner or later, it finds expression through speech. The words we speak are not accidents of emotion or byproducts of habit. They are revelations of what lies within. The tongue is not disconnected from the soul. It is tethered to it, and it leaks the truth of our inner condition, whether we recognize it or not. We may dress ourselves in restraint, posture with pleasantries, and filter our expressions in public. But the moment pressure comes, when we are tired, hurt, angry, or afraid, the tongue breaks free and speaks with alarming honesty. It does not lie about us, it exposes us. Sharp words do not simply arise from a moment of irritation, they signal a long-held bitterness. Gossip does not form in a vacuum. It is born from insecurity and comparison. Cruelty does not stem from strength, but from a place of wounded pride or unresolved hurt. The tongue becomes the messenger of the soul's unrest, the courier of its deepest thoughts. This is why controlling the tongue is not merely about silence or politeness, it is about transformation of the inner life. If you seek to master your speech, you must first master your spirit. You cannot cleanse the water by polishing the faucet. You cannot make a bitter spring sweet by putting a label over it. You must go to the source. You must examine your heart, your wounds, your beliefs, and your assumptions. For what fills the heart will fill the mouth, and what fills the mouth will tackle. Words are not passive. They carry life or death. They either construct or dismantle. They either call people upward or drag them downward. One sentence can break a heart. One compliment can plant courage. One phrase, spoken in love, can heal years of damage. The power of life and death is in the tongue, not just because of its volume, but because of its spiritual weight. It's easy to dismiss words as momentary, but their impact endures far beyond the moment they are uttered. What we speak often becomes what someone else believes. And yet, the problem is not simply that we speak hastily, it is that we often speak without awareness. We do not trace our words back to their root. We speak to be heard, but rarely pause to ask, why did I say that? What in me needed to be released? What part of my soul leaked through that sentence? The tongue gives away secrets we haven't yet acknowledged. It reveals the parts of us we think are buried. It betrays our insecurities, our longings, our grudges, our vanities. It tells on us before we are ready to admit the truth. This is why it is dangerous to dismiss careless words as just talk. Words are never just words. They are manifestations of soul state. They are spiritual signals, each one echoing something deeper. When sarcasm becomes habitual, it is often masking pain. When criticism flows freely, it may be cloaking insecurity. When words are always defensive, they may be trying to protect a tender, unhealed place. And when the tongue is harsh, it is usually echoing a heart that has not yet known peace. But if the tongue can be the overflow of pain, it can also be the overflow of healing. When the soul is well, the words that flow out bring light. When grace has been received deeply, it is spoken freely. When love roots itself in the heart, it naturally spills out in speech. The person who has cultivated inner peace does not need to shout to be heard. Their words carry weight not because of their volume, but because of the stillness from which they arise. It is easy to focus on the symptoms, the sharp remark, the cold silence, the biting joke, but the deeper work is always internal. To transform the tongue, we must surrender the soul. We must bring our wounds before wisdom, our fears before faith, our pride before truth. Only then does the overflow change. Only then do our words begin to heal instead of harm, to edify instead of erode, to build instead of break. For the tongue is not the beginning of the problem, it is the evidence of it. And if we would learn to listen to what we say, we might discover who we truly are. Money is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. It is commonly treated as a measure, a scoreboard of success, a standard of security, or a symbol of value. But this is a dangerous illusion. Money in its purest form does not measure the worth of a person, it reveals the nature of a person. It is not a ruler but a mirror. It reflects what already exists within, not what you wish to display. To believe that the amount of money one possesses determines their greatness is to fall into a trap, both subtle and seductive. The world teaches that accumulation equals importance, that wealth equals wisdom, and that prosperity equals character. But how many wealthy people have crumbled under the weight of their own appetites? How many fortunes have amplified vices rather than virtue? Wealth in itself has no moral quality. It is neither good nor evil, it merely magnifies what is already there. If a man is generous before he is rich, he will be more generous when wealth arrives. If he is selfish, money will give that selfishness room to grow unchecked. If he is prideful, money will feed his ego. If he is humble, money will test that humility. What you do with your resources reveals what holds your heart. It is not about how much you have, but what you are doing with what you have. Some of the most generous souls have little by the world's standards, yet their hands are always open, their hearts always attentive, and some of the richest are endlessly grasping, living as though they are forever impoverished. Money reveals priorities. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, not the other way around. What do you spend on without hesitation? What do you save for? What do you fear losing? These questions do not just expose financial habits, they unveil hidden loyalties and inner frameworks of meaning. A budget is a spiritual document. It shows what you love, what you trust, and what you hope for. And money has a way of unveiling trust. Many say they have faith until their finances are threatened. Many proclaim peace until the market shakes. But when fear enters the room, money often becomes the false savior. It is the golden calf of our generation, shiny, dependable, and utterly silent in the face of spiritual crisis. People look to it for control, thinking that if they have enough, they are insulated from pain. But money cannot heal grief. It cannot mend a broken relationship. It cannot bring back lost time. It cannot quiet the storms of the soul. It can only distract, not deliver. The danger lies not in having money, but in what you begin to believe because of it. If you begin to think your success is solely your doing, you forget grace. If you think your safety is built on savings, you forget providence. If you measure your value by your bank balance, you forget identity. The moment money becomes a measure rather than a mirror, it becomes a master rather than a servant. There are many who will chase riches all their lives and arrive at the end with full accounts but empty souls. Their houses will be large and their hearts small, their closets full and their character thin. They will have traveled far in status but gone nowhere in depth. Money, when misunderstood, can trick a person into believing they are rich in life when they are only rich in possession. And yet, when rightly seen as a mirror, it becomes a powerful tool for growth. It can reveal where you're insecure. It can expose what you fear losing. It can show you whether you live for applause or for purpose. It can humble you, refine you, teach you. It invites you to examine your motives, to ask, why do I want more? What will I do with it? Who am I becoming in pursuit of it? Money is not the goal. It is a revealer. And once you stop treating it as your measure of meaning, you can begin to let it reflect what matters most. You can give freely, live simply, and bless quietly. You can detach your identity from your income. You can see your worth as unshaken by either surplus or scarcity. You can stop striving to prove yourself through accumulation and start reflecting the deeper truths that no currency can buy. In a world addicted to noise, silence is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for weakness, passivity, or indecision. But silence, when chosen, not imposed, is one of the most potent forms of strength. It is not the absence of power, but the presence of mastery. It is the quiet strength of someone who does not need to prove, to persuade, or to parade. There is a silence that shouts louder than any declaration, and a restraint that holds more sway than 1,000 actions. There is a kind of courage in silence that few possess. It takes little strength to react, to speak impulsively, to assert one's opinion the moment it is formed, but to pause, to weigh, to withhold until the right moment. That is the work of inner maturity. In the silence between stimulus and response lies the sacred space where wisdom is born. The world praises immediacy, but the soul grows in the margins between noise. Silence does not always mean agreement. Often it is discernment in disguise. It says, I could speak, but I will not, because this moment calls not for sound, but for presence. It is the discipline of listening when ego demands a voice. It is the strength to be still when pride urges a performance. Sometimes the most eloquent answer is no answer at all, and the greatest influence is exerted in restraint. Consider the power of a person who can remain calm in the midst of provocation. When others rage, they remain still. When others demand a reaction, they offer only stillness. This is not silence born of fear, but silence forged in fire. It is a practiced discipline, a sign that someone has learned to master the tempest within, rather than be mastered by it. A single moment of held tongue has saved many relationships. A single word unsaid has preserved much dignity. Not every truth needs to be voiced in every moment. Not every impulse deserves expression. Restraint, likewise, is often confused with hesitation. But in truth, restraint is a form of deliberate strength. It is the act of holding back, not because you lack the power to act, but because you possess the wisdom to wait. Action can be impressive, but not all action is wise. There are times when doing nothing is the bravest thing you can do. There are times when stepping back is what moves the story forward. Restraint says, I know I could, but I choose not to because what is right must not be rushed. It is in restraint that integrity is tested. When you have the chance to retaliate, to boast, to manipulate, to force an outcome, and you choose not to, that is the evidence of inner transformation. True strength lies not in the flexing of power, but in the refusal to abuse it. It is easy to act out of urgency, out of anger, or out of anxiety, but restraint waits on clarity. It chooses wisdom over immediacy and obedience over impulse. Silence and restraint are not passive. They are active choices deeply rooted in trust. Trust that time will reveal truth. Trust that not everything must be defended. Trust that some battles are won not through aggression, but through surrender to a higher path. The person who chooses silence is often the one most confident in what cannot be shaken. The person who practices restraint is often the one most anchored in what does not change. We live in a culture that equates volume with value and speed with significance. We are encouraged to respond quickly, loudly, visibly. But much of what is real and meaningful grows quietly. Seeds take root in silence. Character is forged in hidden places. Decisions of depth are made in solitude. Noise may gather attention, but it rarely offers transformation. It takes great courage to remain silent when misunderstood, to resist the urge to clarify or defend. It takes even greater strength to hold back when wronged, when you are right, and have the power to act but choose not to. This is not cowardice, it is conviction. This is not withdrawal, it is wisdom. To be silent is not to be invisible, it is to be in control. And to be restrained is not to be weak, it is to be deeply rooted. There are storms that pass when left unchallenged, fires that die when not fed, and conflicts that resolve when not escalated. Silence does not mean absence, it often means presence in its most distilled form. And restraint does not signal defeat, it is often the doorway to greater strength, deeper peace, and unseen victories. Self-control is often seen as mere willpower, a human effort to resist temptation, to restrain impulses, to impose discipline on unruly desires. But this view is incomplete and shallow. Self-control, at its deepest and truest, is not simply a moral exertion, it is a sacred declaration. It is an act of worship. Every time you deny the pull of the flesh in order to honor something greater, you are not just being disciplined, you are bowing. You are offering your desires, your thoughts, your instincts as a living sacrifice to something higher than yourself. Worship is not confined to songs or rituals or sacred spaces. It is not just what happens in temples or churches. True worship is lived out in daily choices, in the unseen moments when no one is watching, when the heart whispers, I want, and the soul replies, not now or not this. Every act of self-denial for the sake of truth, purity, humility, or love is an altar erected in the heart, a silent song of allegiance to a higher kingdom. When you choose to remain silent instead of retaliating in anger, that is worship. When you resist the craving to indulge in something that would dull your soul, that is worship. When you pause before reacting, when you measure your words, when you refuse to let envy dictate your actions, when you shut the door on bitterness, that is not just moral maturity. It is the soul saying, you, Lord, are worth more to me than this fleeting desire. Self-control becomes worship when it is not about self-preservation or image management, but about honoring what is eternal over what is immediate. The practice of self-control is the acknowledgement that you are not your own master. It is the admission that your desires are real but not always right, that your emotions are valid but not always true, that your instincts are powerful but not always holy. To exercise self-control is to hand over the reins of your life and say, I trust something wiser than my feelings, something deeper than my appetites, something more beautiful than my pride. That trust is worship. And this worship is costly. It will demand that you say no when it would be easier and even more gratifying to say yes. It will mean choosing stillness when the world demands reaction, choosing kindness when anger feels justified, choosing patience when urgency screams for control. It will mean resisting the urge to defend yourself when misjudged, to assert your worth when overlooked, to grasp for more when contentment is the holier path. And in those moments, you are not just being good, you are being faithful. Self-control reframes the idea of freedom. The world says freedom is the ability to do whatever you want. But true freedom is the power to not do what will enslave you. Self-control is not the cage, it is the key. It liberates you from being ruled by what is momentary. It sets your heart on a foundation deeper than shifting moods or surface-level satisfaction. It is worship because it declares, my pleasure is not my God, my convenience is not my compass, my instincts are not my king. In the hidden decisions of restraint, we practice devotion. When no one sees the battle but you and God, and you still choose the narrow road, that is the most sincere form of praise. There is no audience, no applause. Only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you honored the unseen, that you chose the eternal over the urgent. And this in heaven's eyes is holy. Self-control also mirrors the very character of God. It is not merely a human effort, but a reflection of divine patience, divine strength, divine love. Every time you exercise it, you draw closer to the image you were made in. You embody the gentle power of one who is not ruled by the storm, but walks on its waves. You become like the one who could summon legions of angels, but chose instead a crown of thorns. The one who, though sovereign over all, restrained himself out of love. So self-control is not repression, it is reverence. It is not weakness, it is worship. It is not denial for the sake of deprivation, but for the sake of deeper joy, truer love, and lasting peace. It turns every moment of struggle into a sacred opportunity to say, without words, you are worthy of my yes and my no, my hunger and my patience, my desire and my delay. And so the quiet battle becomes a holy offering, and the hidden victory an eternal song. The world sells a lie so skillfully that even the wisest sometimes forget it's not the truth. That freedom is the ability to have whatever you want, whenever you want it. That freedom is found in the abundance of options, the absence of restrictions, and the power to indulge without restraint. But true freedom, deep, lasting, soul-rooted freedom is not discovered in getting everything you desire. It is found in the strength to hold back, to walk away, to say no when your flesh demands a yes. This kind of freedom does not shout. It does not need to prove itself through extravagance or noise. It is the quiet assurance of a person who is not mastered by desire, not driven by appetite, not owned by what they own. The one who is truly free can walk through temptation and not be pulled by it, can possess much yet not be possessed by any of it. They do not fear lack because their peace is not anchored in having more, but in needing less. In a culture that equates freedom with more choices, more control, more expression, this idea seems foreign. But look at the life of the soul under that illusion. Look at the anxiety that grows with every additional option. Look at the discontentment that flourishes in the endless pursuit of just a little more. The heart becomes cluttered, the spirit restless, and what was once pursued for joy becomes a burden to maintain. What was once desired becomes a cage. Freedom is not found in permission to indulge, it is found in the power to refrain. To hold back is not to live in deprivation, but to live in deliberate alignment with something higher. It is to resist being dragged by every impulse and instead to rise above it. This kind of restraint is not repression, it is reverence. It is the recognition that not every craving deserves a response, not every opportunity is worth the cost, not every desire leads to life. To hold back when you could take, to wait when you could rush, to release when you could grasp, these are the sacred actions of a soul that has been trained in freedom. It is the paradox of strength that true power is not proven in domination, but in discipline. To want and yet wait, to desire and yet deny, is to declare that your joy does not depend on the fulfillment of desire, but on the flourishing of the spirit. The truly free person is not the one who has tasted every pleasure, but the one who can look pleasure in the face and choose peace. Ed. They can stand in the presence of temptation, of noise, of glittering distraction, and not be moved. They have learned the holy art of sufficiency, not resignation, not passivity, but the confident contentment of someone who knows what they truly need, and it is not more. This is not a call to poverty of possession, but to richness of restraint. It is entirely possible to own much and still be inwardly light, to succeed greatly and still walk humbly, to have access to abundance and yet live with open hands. The difference lies in who is in control. If you are governed by your appetites, your possessions, your desires, then freedom will always elude you. But if you can govern those things, if you can hold them lightly, release them easily, restrain them wisely, then you are free indeed. Holding back cultivates room for what truly matters. It makes space for wonder, for gratitude, for communion, for clarity. It quiets the noise of excess so you can hear the whisper of what is eternal. It teaches the heart to love not in the rush of passion, but in the quiet resolve of commitment. It teaches the mind to value wisdom over immediacy, and the spirit to trust what it cannot yet see. In this way, holding back becomes a form of worship. It is a declaration that your worth is not proven by your performance, that your identity is not secured by what you own, that your joy is not dependent on consumption. It is the soul saying, I am already full. I need not devour everything before me to feel alive. And in that moment, you are not diminished. You are dignified. You are not denied. You are delivered. True freedom is not the liberty to consume, to conquer, to claim. It is the grace to release, to wait, to choose less so that the soul may gain more. It is not found in having, but in holding back,